Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at soundcloudstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@soundcloudstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. SoundCloud Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for it goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia. Available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com on over 40 podcast platforms, heard in over 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music. Also heard on HamiltonRadio.net, Diamonds FM, Oldies Radio, and a few networks coming soon. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, baseball gear, and more. Makes great gifts for your family, friends, and loved ones 24/7. Go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. I'll support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, themikewagnershow.com. Make sure you give generously today. He's backed by popular demand. He began his first company at the age of 17, opened up Laughs Unlimited back in 1980 at the beloved age of 24. And he worked with Gary Shandling, Dave Coulier, and the late Bob Saget, and also Graham Chapman from Monty Python, Soupy Sales, and more. He also developed the talents of Paula Poundstone, Dana Carvey, and he also has a brand new podcast with short bits of comedy, jokes, and stories. And we had him on before, and he was the host of a podcast, your host and MC. And he also had a book out as well, too. But he's got a brand new podcast, which is Comedy Appeteasers. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios at one of the wonderful comedy clubs, the very multi-talented, very, very entrepreneurial author and the host of the brand new podcast, Comedy Appeteasers. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Scott Edwards. Scott, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us once again.
It's amazing you don't run out of breath. I got to tell you, Mike, you get a mouthful of information out there, but it's always great not only listening to your shows, but obviously it's a great honor to be on your show. And this is my second time, so whoop whoop.
That's right.
I'm going to sleep good tonight. Another goal off that bucket list.
There you go, and I'm sure you got a lot of goals as well too. Of course, you had your book as well too, and you also began your first company at 17, and you had been the host of your host and MC podcast. You got a brand new podcast called Comedy Appeteasers as well too, and you had a lot of great stories about worked with Gary Shandling, Dave Coulier, the late Bob Saget, and more. And before getting to your latest ventures, once again, very quickly, tell us how you got started.
Well, just for your audience to catch them up, I am a serial entrepreneur. I started off at a young age of 17, had a small construction company. Then I went into disco when it was hip in the late 70s. But the big news was in 1980, I opened up one of the first comedy clubs in the country. And it was at that time I got a chance to work with Bob Saget, who was a real mentor at the time. He kind of told me what I needed to do to make the club a success. He introduced me to people like Gary Shandling and George Wallace. And he also told me how to treat the comics, which made me very popular with the comedy entertainers. As you alluded to in the intro, I got a chance to work with Jerry Seinfeld, Will Shriner, Jay Leno. Dana Carvey was one of my opening regulars. And it was a really enjoyable time. And it was those years in the owning a chain of comedy clubs that I collected a lot of content or material, and now I'm sharing that. I'm kind of giving back. The last 2.5 years, I had my podcast, Standup Comedy, your host and MC, which is a celebration of the comedy entertainment as an art form. And that has a new show each and every week where either I'm sharing original material from back in the 80s and 90s of famous and not so famous comics, but
We don't
also
need to know that unless you want to throw them out there. So
but I also so what the new news is that I took the bonus shows off of that first podcast because they're hour-long shows. I do a lot of interviews of my old friends, famous and not so famous comics, and just recently, in fact, had a chance to interview Ed Solomon. And people may not know the name, but he was the writer of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He went on to do the Men in Black series. Very talented movie writer and script writer. I got a great interview with him. And so these interviews and material were hour-long shows. And I thought, well, not everybody has an hour to get their laugh for the day. And so I created Comedy Appeteasers, which is a short form comedy bits, short stories, and jokes from professional entertainers to get your Friday started each and every week. And it just started last week, Mike. So getting a chance to mention it on your show is huge. Ladies and gentlemen, check out Comedy Appeteasers on all platforms.
Yes, that's right too. And of course, it doesn't have to be 40. If you want to make it 40, it's like go right ahead. I mean, I encourage the challenge too. The 100 countries want to do 200, that's fine too. So
well, we were talking before the show. What's interesting and kind of exciting about this, I got into podcasting. A quick recap, Mike. I had written a book on my history, 20 plus years in the fringe of show business. And my wife said, no one's going to read your crappy book. You ought to do a podcast. And that's how I ended up in podcasting in the late 2019, early 2020, right before COVID hit. But what's been exciting is not only have I been able to reconnect with my old friends in the business, but the podcast does not just reach, just like your show, Mike, a US or California market. I'm in California, you're in North Dakota. I'm sure we both have a good market in our own states. But what's really exciting is that I have listeners all around the world, as you do.
and that's the thing too, is it's like, I last checked my statistics. I had India, Pakistan just ruling the roost. You had France, you got Germany, you got Canada. Of course, surprisingly, US was about according to one source, I think number 4. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, we should be number 1. But of course, yes, there is a market out there. I've got a following in London. I've had some people from Moscow listen, Norway, Bermuda, and Jamaica, and I've also had Sweden and Japan and I think little countries like Trinidad and Tobago and Canary Islands. And Weelandia has been newly formed off the coast of Brazil. A brand new country just got formed called Weelandia, and we just made it our 101st market that got accept the Mike Wagner show called Weelandia. So we're going to celebrate that. David Fernand, the president and founder and king of Weelandia. So we like to salute him and thank you for having it on as well.
Well, it just proves that the Mike Wagner show is so big, too big for the world, they had to add an additional country.
That's right. And of course, I think you can probably create your own country too. If you're create your own country, what would it be?
Right. Well, mine would probably not welcome anybody under 21, but we try to have fun. In fact, I was bringing up the international taste. I was very blessed to get a nice article in Podcast Magazine in March of last year. But I also just this year made a top 10 list and magazine rating and interview on it's called the Podcast Bible. Nice. Out of London, England. And it was like a shock because as much as I'm trying to entertain all the folks here on the mainland, getting the chance to reach the people over the pond and share some of the comedy that made America great is a lot of fun.
And certainly it's a lot of fun too. And of course, one point back in the 80s and early 90s, you'd have comedians from Moscow, Russia, and other parts of Russia coming over the U.S. and display their talents too. Yakov Smirnoff, led the way, and of course, you also had some American comedians coming over to Moscow. So there's been exchange as well too, and of course, I think we had some people I think from parts of Asia come over to do some comedy, and of course, you had some of our comics come over to Asia as well too. So it pretty much just goes back and forth when it comes to countries like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. In fact, you mentioned Yakov Smirnoff. He was an opening act back in 1980, still learning the English language when I started working with him. He's gone on to get his own PhD and is a world-renowned comic and now a psychologist. And I got a chance to interview him. It's on my Stand-Up Comedy or Host and MC podcast. If you get a chance, check it out. But to what you were saying, two of the comics that I helped start as opening acts and open micers ended up having great careers. Arj Barker, who's a stand-up comic, and Dave Strassman, who's a comic ventriloquist, have both become like super celebrities in all places, Australia.
Wow.
And yet here in the US, they're not that known. I mean, they're popular and they're still very funny, but I mean, they're like the mega stars of Australia. And it's just interesting that somebody I was helping teach how to do comedy is now a huge celebrity on the level of Jay Leno or Jerry Seinfeld. But in Australia, I found it really interesting.
I think there must be something he knows our way to connect Australians or whatever it is, and everything else too. Talk about ventriloquist, that's starting to make a comeback too. Jeff Dunham has been leading the way, and also had Mike Dupree on the show. He's out of New Jersey, and April Brucker, who's been in Las Vegas, was the first female ventriloquist, or maybe like the first of its kind in a long time. And I think there's probably some others I can't think of. Ventriloquism, yes, that is also making a comeback. Jeff Dunn is really leading the way on that one.
Yeah, in fact, on America's Got Talent, they had two great ventriloquists so far this season, one of which may make it to the end. As a podcaster, I don't know if you do this, Mike, but we sometimes swap shows, and I was able to swap my Willie Tyler and Lester ventriloquist interview with a guy named Steve Hewlett out of England, United Kingdom. He has a show, get this, called Eyes and Teeth.
Eyes and Teeth?
Yeah, Eyes and Teeth. And Steve is a very talented ventriloquist. And during COVID, he started his own podcast where he was interviewing other entertainers. And he's had so much success with it. He's kept it going, even though he's back on stage as a ventriloquist. But we did a podcast show exchange where I took one of his shows interviewing a famous ventriloquist from England and put it on my podcast. And he took my interview of Willie Tyler and his pal Lester and put it on his show, and both got great reviews. So another way to share internationally, and it's really exciting.
And very exciting indeed too, as well too. Unlike back in the days in broadcasting where you fought for number one. And I learned from one of the guests I had on the show, who's a saxophone player for Pink Floyd, Supertramp, Morris, Scott Page. Big shout out to him. He gave me a very important lesson. You create your own number one. And I tell everybody, Joe Rogan's the number one podcaster. I said, Joe, you can have your number one. I got my number one. I'm going to create my own number one. You just get two people to listen. And of course, remember that commercial with the shampoo? It's like, his shampoo is great. I told two of my friends, and she told two of their friends and told two of their friends, and so on and so on and so on. Well, that's just the same thing. And that's how you grow too. So it's a matter of just sharing information and encouraging each other to be their own number ones. I mean, it's so fragmented. And of course, you're number one in your own right. I'm number one in my own right. And whoever's listening as a podcaster is number one in their own right. So Joe Rogan, you can have your number one. You got this. You got this, man.
Well, I wouldn't mind his money, but yeah, when it comes to podcasting, just finding your audience and entertaining your audience, and whether it's 10 people or 10,000, if there's people out there listening and enjoying what you're sharing, your content, that's really why we're here. It's sharing something. In your case, you're doing interviews with famous musicians, and Laura, that children's songwriter. You just had the health guy, Tim James, on there. So you're getting this great mix of information for your listeners. I'm more comedy oriented, but it's not just stand-up comics. I just interviewed the manager of Ryan O'Neal, the actor, Neil Hassman, and he, that was different for me. But there was also the owner of the Ice House, which is one of the original comedy clubs ever in the country. The Ice House in Pasadena, California, was started and operated by Bob Fisher, a peer of mine, because we were both comedy club owners, and I got a chance to interview him. So it's not just stand-up comics, it's getting a little variety, ventriloquists, jugglers, club owners, and that information and those, and I think entertaining interviews have been enjoyed by my listening audience, just like yours have been enjoyed the variety that you bring to the airwaves.
And what's also nice too is that not only get the people to present what they present, you also learn from them as well too.
Oh.
So I guess a thing I've also learned is that you ask questions that no one's ever asked before, just like the Rolling Stones. They get asked all the time, when are you gonna retire? When are you gonna release an album? So same questions over and over. You got to think of something that just challenge and everything. Of course, basically, what do you learn, and some things about yourself like you learn in podcasting and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I went from a construction company owner to a comedy club owner. I was a car salesman, it's called a fleet director for a number of years. I ended up with my own insurance agency, which I sold and retired from last year. But the podcasting gets a chance to take all the skills I learned as a salesman and as a customer service representative and bring it to hopefully make me a good Q&A guy, like you said, ask the right questions and be able to shut up and listen to the right answer.
Do comedians ever shut up or something? I guess that's a big question. Do they ever shut up? And Jerry Seinfeld, I guess he had one of those Seinfeldisms, saying like, what was it? If people live in apartments, like why are they all together? That sort of thing. So
well, it is true that some people, and I'm sure you've run into this when you have guests, that you have to kind of pull information out of. They're not really loose about it. But there's been a couple people, Bobby Slayton, the pit bull of comedy, very talented stand-up comic, now retired in Los Angeles, but he is a talker. And I basically said, hey, welcome to the show. And he goes, okay, Scott, you shut up. I'm going from here. And he talked for like the next hour, right? So he just took charge. And then I know we were talking about Bob Saget. It was really sad when we heard of his passing. And a shock, because he was a healthy guy still out on the road entertaining. And I wasn't able to get a chance to interview him, even though he was a very old and dear friend of mine and really helped me get started in comedy back in 1980. But another gentleman that we lost just this year, a very talented comic magician, famous in Las Vegas, his name's Amazing Jonathan. And he was just this crazy magician that did really off the wall, wacky, almost cartoonish kind of magic. And he had his own show in Vegas for over 15 years, made tons of money. But sadly, he did develop a strange form of cancer. They gave him 3 years to live, and 12 years later, he was still going. But we did lose him recently. The reason I brought that up was he was one of those personalities where I basically introduced him and he goes, okay, get out of the way. Now I'm going to talk. And he shared great stories of working with Penn and Teller and major rock groups in Vegas and all the experiences of being kind of behind the scenes in Las Vegas. A great interview. So if your listeners want to check out my show, Standup Comedy, your host and MC, look for either the Bobby Slayton or the Amazing Jonathan interview. Both are very entertaining. And you don't hear me at all.
And sometimes you do got to take a break. I've had those too, where it's like you ask one question, they just go on and on and on. And of course, I had one a while back. He was a healer, and I think he was I'm trying to think, what was it like? He was like a psychic, and at one time it's like we were sharing stories about this, that, relationships, what they did with the client and all that. And I think one point we got into some joke and we laughed for like 5 straight minutes, and it just like literally took 5 minutes. And after all, I'm like, I'm sorry, what were we talking about again? So
well, what's interesting about laughter is it's addicting. So when you're having that kind of fun, your listeners are joining in and laughing as well. And what's great about comedy and humor is that it's a shared emotional experience. And whether you're in a nightclub seeing it live or listening to it on a podcast, you're engaged in the conversation and everybody tends to laugh together. I do think it's a little more fun in a crowded professional nightclub because there's that shared energy. But I know that even the people listening to my podcast enjoy the comedy and they can hear the audience, because all my shows were recorded live on stage. And so they get that sense of the moment, you know, things that can't be recreated. What was interesting, I was telling you, Mike, that my podcast, Stand-Up Comedy Host and MC, provides a bonus show every other Wednesday, just a short form of comedy. And I was able to turn that into a new podcast called Comedy Appeteasers. And both of these are my shows. But here's something I was wondering, I wanted to ask if you had done. I've been asked to produce another gentleman's podcast. It won't launch until August, but the 2019 Comic Magician of the Year, his name's Larry Wilson, world renowned, played all over the world, still outperforming. But he asked me to produce, and we're not doing a whole podcast, but we're doing a series of 10 shows on comedy magic.
Nice.
And basically the concept, name of the show's called The Magic Hat, a comedy magic podcast. It doesn't start until next month. I'm producing it for him, but basically he's delving into the reasons people, because magic is its own art form. So why does somebody do comedy magic? And he's sharing kind of the behind the scenes of how you turn a trick from a, you know, kind of a regular magic trick into a funny magic trick, and why he does it. I think it's going to be fascinating. We'll see.
And I think sounds fascinating too. I've been asked to produce other shows as well too, and you know, Q&A, take calls and whatever else. And of course, you know, what I like about the hosts is like they draw you into the conversation, not just there be a board monkey and all that. They like to draw you in too. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited about it. So maybe your listeners can keep an eye out if you're a fan of comedy magic. It's called The Magic Hat, a comedy magic podcast, and it'll be out, I believe, in August sometime. But so lots going on, lots keeping us busy, just like you, Mike.
And certainly well too. And what's coming up in 2022 and beyond for Scott Edwards, we'll find out just 1 minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at SoundCloudStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@SoundCloudStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve 11 endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 40 podcast platforms, including Hamilton Radio, Oldies FM, Diamonds Radio, and more. Take us with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok today. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com and check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books, merchandise, and more. Also support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Make sure you do so today. We're here with the amazing Scott Edwards, your host and MC podcast here on the Mike Wagner Show. We talked about Comedy Appeteasers podcast, and makes me really want to, check that out. And just one more thing before we talk about what's coming up for you. Where can we find Comedy Appeteasers again?
It is available on all platforms, Mike. I was able, I use Buzzsprout as my host, and they hooked me up with all the various platforms. It did just start last week, so it's just getting going. If anybody would like to check it out, it's an amazing short form podcast. All the shows are anywhere from 3 to 6 minutes long, but it's pure comedy bits, comedy stories, and jokes by professional entertainers, and all recorded recently. It's not like my regular podcast from the 80s and 90s. This is stuff that I got from professional entertainers just in the last year and a half, and it's a lot of fun. I want to tell everybody to be a little careful. I went out and I got my own Mike Wagner pillow, but I was so excited I couldn't use it to go to sleep. I just couldn't go to sleep on it. So I have to kind of hide it under the bed so I could sleep because I was just too excited.
You sure the dog wasn't sleeping on it? The cat was doing the business, or your wife tried to take it from you? Was that really what happened? I mean, you can tell me, it's okay. I mean, we can send another one to you. So here we go.
Well, I just got to tell you, Mike, it's such a pleasure to be on your show and your podcast. You're doing a great job bringing a terrific variety of conversations to your listeners. And it's, that's the bottom line. That's why you're a success.
And you as well, Scott, and you've got a lot of success as well too. And besides your comedy Appeteasers podcast, what else can we expect from you in 2022 and beyond? You want to talk about 23, 24? That's fine by me. So,
well, it's funny that you bring it up. I mentioned the show I'm producing, the Magic Hat, a comedy magic podcast that I'm producing that'll come out next month, but it's a little early to get too excited, and you're the first audience to hear about it. So don't anybody tell anybody. It's a secret. But I'm working with some people out of England, and I'm putting together the first stand-up comedy podcast network. We've already got 7 different podcasts signed up. It's all comedy related and comedy based. And this network will share podcast. It'll share comedy videos and comedy blogs, and it'll be available not only as a website but also as an app. But that's something that's a little bit in the future, a few months away, maybe next year. But it is something I'm working on.
And we're certainly looking forward to as well, Scott. Once again, we're with Scott Edwards, a brand new podcast, Comedy Appeteasers, on the Mike Wagner Show. Scott, as always, a big thank you for your time. You're always amazing. Feel free to come back anytime. It's always great to have you on board, and always looking forward to have you on. Once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people check out your book, check out your podcast, and check out everything else?
Well, thanks for asking, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, the main podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, is the base. There is a website. It is scottscomedystuff.com, scottscomedystuff.com. You can reach me through that, find out about my various podcasts, whether I'm the host or producing. Lots of fun there. I don't have the exciting merchandise that Mike does, but as soon as I kick the dog off the pillow, I'll be sure to get some rest on that new Mike Wagner pillow.
And if you come up with a better pillow, I say go for it. That's all. Have a pillow fight one day. Maybe get on stage to do that. Get one of the comedians to do it. Get their own pillow. So,
well, thanks for having me on. And this is a great chance to launch a brand new podcast that just came out last week, Comedy Appeteasers, available on all platforms. And again, it's each and every Friday, a new show from 3 to 6 minutes long, just to start your weekend off with a laugh. Be sure to check it out.
We will certainly do so. Once again, Scott, a very big thank you for your time. You're always amazing, and always looking forward to having you on, and definitely wish you all the best. And yeah, you got a great future ahead of you and beyond.